Hello, everybody. Welcome to L.I.N.K Live. My name is Marina, Editor-in-Chief of Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executive.
And I'm Brielle the Associate Editor.
And I am Mackenna Morales, and I am the Assistant Editor.
And today we're talking about the microchip shortage, the cannabis shortage, and the generational divide in sustainability. So I'm going to kick things off talking about the microchip shortage. You know, the automobile industry is currently being challenged with this microchip shortage, which in turn is slowing down production. Some automakers have even been shutting down their plants, which then further complicates the job market for the supply chain industry, which is still recovering from the COVID pandemic, among other supply chain disruptions. So how did this happen? We're going to backtrack a little bit. According to the Semiconductor Industry Association, the auto industry reduced production in the early months of the pandemic when demand for cars dropped. You know, everyone was working from home, so they didn't really need to go out and buy a new car. However, the demand for the semiconductor chips itself surged in the electronics area because companies and schools needed those chips for work from home computers and other equipment. And a lot of companies removed their employees to a remote setting, so they too needed that infrastructure to be able to operate remotely, which is something we talked about in L.I.N.K Live last week. So fast forward to when America started opening up a bit, and that demand for cars has skyrocketed at a faster pace than expected. And that leads us to where we are today. U.S. semiconductor companies account for 47% of global chip sales, but only 12% of the global manufacturing is done in the United States, and that's according to the Semiconductor Industry Association. So that just kind of shows like what's happening overseas, how that impacts the United States and vice versa. However, we saw a report earlier today that from IHS Markit that talked about how the industry could see 672,000 fewer vehicles produced during the first quarter of 2021. And that also includes fleet. So keep that in mind because we're still dealing with a driver shortage. So here we are, not only have a driver shortage, but now we're going to have a fleet shortage. So it's kind of compounding a lot of things. And when President Biden launched his 100-day supply chain review, it included a review on semiconductor chips, batteries for electric vehicles, and more. Which, by the way, if you go to foodlogistics.com and SDCExec.com, you'll read my blog this week on the 100-day supply chain review and how some of the pitfalls are stemming from such an undertaking are impacting the industry. So what's next? I don't know. The federal travel regulation predicts the shortage could last until August. And as we've seen with other supply chain disruptions within the past year and a half, disruption of this magnitude could definitely pose a domino effect of issues. So Brielle, I know you're covering a shortage of a different kind. I'm going to pass things over to you now. Brielle, are you on mute?
Is that better?
Yes. You're good.
Sorry. All right. So many states this past year have legalized weed, and in addition to many other years, but it was just steamrolled this year. It was quite a big leap in the number of states that legalized cannabis. And because of this, there's a lot of shortages happening beyond the legalization, which is making its way to the cannabis sector. And as many states are gearing up to legalize officially, where you can actually legally use cannabis products, a lot of people are nervous about shortages. Things like climate change have affected this. A lot of the shortage in workers is rampant in every sector, including the cannabis sector. And then there's also regulation that have caused a lack of product to happen. So many states like New Mexico is hoping to raise the limit in the number of cannabis plants that they have, because right now there is the restriction on the number of plants that you are allowed to have in relation to cannabis products. And so once these laws become reality, there will be a floodgate of product demand that is likely to happen. So many states are gearing up for that. And I do know that New Jersey and New York are having quite a bit of shortage, more so than everyone else. And so I'm it's going to be an interesting couple of years in the cannabis sector. So I think it's definitely a good time to be in that, but we're going to see a lot of changes in how it's done.
Perfect. Mackenna?
I just thought that was really interesting because when Canada first legalized cannabis, they had a huge shortage of it. And then what you were saying, Marina, my fiance got a call from his car dealership asking him if he wanted to trade in his lease early because people are looking for used cars, so he gets to trade in tomorrow. But so should have just talked to you guys more.
Maybe he can provide an update at L.I.N.K Live.
Sure, he's home for the summer anyways. But I wanted to talk about the generational divide for sustainability because we talked last week on L.I.N.K Live about how people are willing to pay more in order to have free shipping, even if it means waiting a bit longer. But with all these e-commerce orders, that means packages are really starting to pile up. And in a recent survey by D.S. Smith, they actually found that the baby boomers are most motivated to recycle their leftover boxes, which I thought was very surprising because we have talked often on this show about how the youth are the most sustainable and that they're the most like conscious about who they are buying from, what they are buying, and if anything is sustainable. But baby boomers are the most motivated to either reuse their boxes or to recycle them properly too, because their main thing is that you can never have too many boxes. So oftentimes they hold on to them so that they don't go in landfills. But according to the survey, approximately 44% said that they are shopping more online during COVID than ever before, and 15% said that they are drowning in boxes. But while people are willing to pay a little bit more for sustainability aspects, 62% put the responsibility to recycle their boxes on themselves, with the rest saying sustainability falls on the companies that make the products packaged in boxes. 34% believe that recycling services in their local communities should also accept them more. So it's like there's a gap between whether people do it themselves or they believe that the company should be able to provide these sustainable services.
I think that's so interesting because in my family, that's exactly how it is. So me and my fiance are really interested in sustainable initiatives. We're always looking for sustainable companies and like things like that, like interesting new ways of being sustainable. But then my mom, who doesn't understand any of that, she doesn't understand why I pay extra for eggs that are pasture raised. Like she doesn't get it and is like, will yell at me for spending that much. But then she'll freak out if I don't recycle correctly. Like everyone needs to recycle every little thing. Like it's so funny. And the boxes, the bottles.
Yeah, there's definitely a generational divide there in terms of the education of it. I know we have talked about that on previous L.I.N.K Lives, and we've also talked about that on SCN Summit, our sustainability session, because, you know, how I was educated about sustainability is completely different than how both of you, and that also proves the generational divide. So, you know, it's just education, but it's also being able to understand what you're supporting and why. And it's holding these companies accountable, which I think is important. But I'm glad sustainability continues to be what it is. And just so that you all know, we are closing our June issue, which is for food logistics, which is our sustainability issue. So keep an eye out in a couple weeks so that you can see our top green providers. We're very excited to announce all of the winners, so congratulations to those. And make sure you go to foodlogistics.com, SDCExec.com, read all of our blogs, download our L.I.N.K podcast, follow us on L.I.N.K Live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central. Make sure you download our white papers. They are free. We're very excited about that. And make sure you register for our upcoming SCN Summit, which is in a couple of weeks, State of the Supply Chain. And we cover a lot of the hot topics that we've been covering on L.I.N.K Live, as well as in all of our topics that we cover on our actual calendar. So make sure you register for that so you are in the know. Thank you for joining us today to receive supply chain news you can use. We'll see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central.